featuring the industry's top leaders. This is The Executive Edge with Joe McClung.
Hello, Floodgate family. I'm absolutely ecstatic to host this Executive Edge with Martin Stenfeldt, who is a longtime MedTech expert, current CEO of UNEEG, and, of course, the author of what I think will be the Bible for scaling life sciences. So we're here really to talk with Martin to learn a lot about that scaling life sciences and, of course, what's going on at UNEEG. But I've gotten a chance to know you both at conferences and conversation, but a lot of people here don't. So give us a little bit of your background, Martin.
Well, yes, I'm commercial background. I've been, growing up in MedTech and life sciences. So straight out of business school, I got into corporate life sciences, was posted a couple of times in the US and in Germany. I'm originally from Denmark. And then I flipped to the dark side of the startup scene and started working in life sciences from the early stage with ventures and so on. So that's a quick one.
Wonderful. And tell me a little bit about what motivated you to start to write this book, this incredible textbook you've got.
So I co-founded MedTrace Pharma 10 years ago and was there active as a co-founder and CEO for 8 years. And when I left the company, I had a lot of people coming to me and asking for advice. And I found out that the advice was more or less the same questions I've had as I built out MedTrace Pharma. So we had a lot of, we had two groups of mentors who we could seek advice at. And we never got the same straight answers, but we got a lot of their lessons learned or do-overs. And that inspired me to say, hey, why don't I try to put together some of my own lessons learned from this journey? And then I found out that probably Martin Stenfeldt alone is not what people find an interest in. But if I ask more people, I couldn't find a guide or any literature on scaling life science companies. So I wanted to start out myself, and that's how it started. Curiosity about how other people have scaled their life science venture.
Yeah. So you went and interviewed, I think it was like 150 different executives, right? And combined their lessons and looked for universals to be able to have here. And some of their exact stories are shared in your book as well, right?
Yeah, I got in touch with direct interviews with more than 50 executives, and then I had a quantitative survey for more than 100 people. So combined the wisdom of 150 plus practitioners.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. So tell me a little bit about some of the key lessons you learned. I mean, one of the things that I think about that jumps to my mind is that, your scaling triangle. Can you explain a little bit about that and what lessons people are listening to this might be able to take from it?
Yeah, so as I went through these interviews, many hours of interviews, there kind of started coming clusters of what I call lessons learned. And I grouped them into these clusters. And out of that came three main clusters, the product, the market, and people. And underneath, I could then make four additional areas. But basically, without going into too much details, it's product and market and people experiences. And I use this as kind of an expert model to frame the relationship between these experiences that people have had all the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I know, when you have such a target-rich environment of all the things you can do and can improve upon as you're scaling in life science or a startup, probably good to be able to focus in segments, right? And I think you have and the scorecard that goes along with that to kind of be able to ascertain how you are in those, right? So you can tell a little bit about how people utilize that tool as they're working through that triangle.
Yeah, because what I was looking for when I left MedTrace and started having these epiphanies about maybe we can help each other better, I thought what I needed to do is something practical, something that you can use operationally. So having the scaling triangle, which kind of frames the different experiences, the touch points, then I made the first model, the Readiness Dashboard. So where are you on the scaling journey, where I use a simple traffic light signal for the 12 areas, which you can self-assess in a very short time frame. And the benefit here is if you do it together in the leadership team, because then you can see the different opinions about where are you on the different areas. Are you ready to scale or are you not ready to scale, or are you already mature? Then you will have a wonderful discussion. If you then identify some red flags, then you can dig deeper with the scaling scorecard, where I've provided a lot of questions which you can then quantify and then start again discussing, do something about, and then you can measure progress over time. So those are the two of the tools I've made, and then which we come back to later, also something about the archetypes I've uncovered on my journey.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that you're talking about using that scorecard, not only quickly, and I love the red, yellow, green, because I'm a simple guy, and I need simple, and so.
Me as well.
So that simple scorecard, but I love the fact that you're saying you can do it individually, but then discuss it as your team, because I bet you there's some times where people are saying we're a green, and the ops guy said, "What, are you kidding me? We're a red," and so you just have that differentiation, and it brings that out before, and you guys are able to collaborate and cover those differences before it becomes a problem later on, right?
Exactly. It's about being aligned. I mean, in a startup, you are a rock orchestra, and then when you scale, you become more like a classic symphony orchestra, and then you need to be much more aligned than when you are individually go hunting for the next round of money or whatever you do on your startup stage.
Yeah, no, that's very true, which kind of brings it back a little bit into another factor, especially in that people part of your triangle, is the archetypes and understanding archetypes. So explain that. Explain the archetypes to our audience here.
Yes. So in my entire career, and especially when I started out as in the startup environment, I saw that we were different types of people in this ecosystem. Some came with a background as an engineer, a doctor, some maybe a caregiver, and others like myself who have a commercial background. We came in with different viewpoints and ways to solve problems. And they all have an upside, but as an archetype, we also have some shadow sides. And that's what I like to contribute to with this book, is that ultimately, when we talk about the lessons learned, it's also about what we favor as part of our archetype. So I developed these 8 archetypes that spans from, well, as I said, engineers and clinicians, but also to the anarchist who just makes things happen, but may not be the right
great
type
things
of
that
person.
moves fast, right? I think you said, right?
Yes, yes, but maybe that person has some deficits when it comes to the long run and the long haul, and have the understanding of what your shadow side is, and being able to again talk openly about it in the team helps a lot in the internal alignment.
Yeah. No, and understanding those, personalities and defaults, and being able to use that correctly in the right phase of the business, right? Because even the anarchist is going to have its role in maybe a company that really needs to rethink, who they are.
Exactly. Right? They all have their benefits. But most people, including myself, don't like to talk about the weak sides. But if we have laid out 8 different archetypes, and you can identify with 1 or 2 of them, then it's easier to talk about the shadow sides openly, and then together find a way to mitigate whatever shadow sides may be the sum of your leadership team when you're moving ahead on your scaling journey.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I'm curious, as you've been, interviewing the 50 and doing the survey of the additional 100, is there a lesson that surprised you most? And if so, what was it?
So I have these 101 lessons learned. Actually, I had 105, but my coach, I'm a first-time author.
101 always sounds like a good one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I take out forward much better. So, but each of those 101 lessons learned are like micro lessons learned that each have a good story behind them. But reflecting on some of them, at least the one that most often came up is when I asked what are your main lessons learned, is that people said, I've been hiring people too fast or doing it wrong, doing it without spending the proper money or time on finding the right person. So I have this, what I call my famous lesson 78, is never underestimate the risk and cost of hiring the wrong person. Take the time and spend the money necessary when hiring key persons and specialists. So it may not be like a wow, I think we have all been it, but that has been the one that has been coming through most of the times. The one other one that I like,
obviously near and dear to my heart, but we've seen, how costly, especially in the starting organization, that wrong hire can be. I mean, I think Schramm says it's $250,000, to hire the wrong person. So and when you're starting, you're building that culture with a small nucleus. They're going to have an amazing influence in the direction.
Yeah, and it has a cost to the company, but it also has some consequences for the person that you eventually then have to get rid of again. So there's a duality in this one.
True. Yeah.
But on all, I mean, once you have the budget to hire that new sales director or the one that you have been badly missing for 1 year, then you shouldn't rush into it. You should do your due diligence, find the right persons, and wait. If it takes 3 months extra, that's at least the lessons that have come up so many times.
Yeah.
But there's one more lesson, and that's my lesson number 75, and that's regarding the relationship between the management and the board. And there's been throughout the book, there's some discussions about how important it is to have a well-functioning team between the board and the executive team. So the relationship is important. But what has come up is, and for me at least, emerging trend of external assessments of the board. We know all the self-assessments of the board where they find out on an annual basis that they should be quicker in responding to agendas that have been sent out, or the agenda material should come out earlier, or something like that. But not the big things are coming out of these self-assessments. But there's a trend of more and more of these MedTech boards and life science companies, which I've been interviewing, that they have external assessments, and that gives an outside-in view on how well-functioning is a board. And I think that's a great lesson to. You cannot implement it if you're a CEO and you want a new board, but at least you can discuss and talk about how about that we had an external assessment. How well do we function together as a team, the board and executive management?
No, I like it. And I'm sure some of your tools like that shadow assessments, or shadow scanner can help to identify the weaknesses of people, and they can identify it and make sure you have the right archetypes on your board that give you that variety of opinions. So you don't over index on, one type of action or another, or be directed, and it can have the right type of influence and the most balanced advice.
Exactly.
Right.
And when it comes to the board, there's a lot of the feedback I got is that you have a lot of investors on the board, and that they may have their own angle on what's important for the company. Where some of the interviews I had where they had a super well-functioning board, it has been very functionally created. So it has been, if it was in the commercialization stage, and you had some commercial people that could open the right doors or have the right competences to guide and lead. So, yeah.
I think that's a very wise. A lot of people will put the board together based on who invested versus putting the board together for an outcome and a purpose. And they could be the same, but it doesn't always mean that's the case, right? That you have that right mix of variety to give you either access, as you described, or insights, to be able to find the right thing. Have that strong financial player on the board. That's gonna it could see those canaries in the mine before you can't make payroll, or things like that, right? So,
and can help bring the best out of the board, between the board and the executive leadership. So, is it the board that supports you, or is it board that you only report to?
Yeah, that's really good suggestions. I know you mentioned a couple great ones on talent and the board cohesion. All the startups and, people scaling in life sciences. I hear one thing all the time: fundraising, right? And investors.
Yes.
Is there a lesson that sticks out that you can give out of those 101 on, really investors or fundraising in general for people listening?
That was a wonderful thing about the survey, because then I was able to quantify how much time CEOs spend on doing fundraising, and I see that there's a clear pattern. You always fundraising, even in the scale-up stage. And I should say the ones I've interviewed are peers in the US and in the Nordics, so Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. And there's a similar trend here that we all spend a lot of time having those relationships. But there are people that they have the fundraising, then they say, okay, now we are safe for the next 6 or 12 months. We can focus on execution. And then you tend to be forgotten by investors. So I think the lessons learned here is by the ones who have burned themselves is that do not stay away from investor conferences. In fact, it's even better once you have just secured money that you can go out and brag a little bit about that, and then you can keep on showing the results that you are achieving, and which makes it much easier next time you need to go out and raise money. And from the survey, there is a lead time in the scale-up environment of 9 to 12 months on an average on a fundraising. I know some can do it in 3 months, but the average I get from my service is that. And the average time is around 60 to 70% of a CEO's time is spent fundraising, directly or indirectly. So there's a data room sometimes that must be managed. There's a non-confidential that must be updated every month or something like that. But it is in that neighborhood. It's quite a lot of time.
Yeah, that's quite a bit, but the advice you have is, I would imagine, they've been spending 70% of their time. They finally get to a point where they can start executing, have the capital to execute. They want to focus on execution. But your advice and lessons that you've heard is stay present. Don't totally get your feet off the gas. Stay in the market. Stay, update. Celebrate the fact that you got the funding. It's only going to make that next round, if you need it, that much easier. Or maybe a connection that you didn't expect, right, happen. So.
Yeah, and that's why you need an awesome team, because you cannot be when you're fundraising, you're also traveling. And you need to have people that are around you as a CEO who can cover and make the sound decision based on the strategy that you've laid out.
Yeah, excellent. Well, now you've wrote all this as the inspiration out of your growth of MedTrace, but now you're a CEO of UNEEG. It's a really unique product as a solution for the EEG space, wearables EEG. But tell us a little bit about that. And of course, I'm curious, what lessons are you using from your scaling life sciences now in your role as CEO for UNEEG?
Yeah, so UNEEG is a scaling company for sure. We have market clearance in Europe. We have an implant that you insert behind the ear, and then you can record EEG 24/7 for, at least in Europe, for up to 3 years. And we have a breakthrough device designation in the US. So we're working on FDA clearance as well. So we are on a scaling journey. I came in 4 months ago, and I would say the things that I directly took from the book concerns my leadership style. I've been learning a lot from my peers on this journey with writing the book. So I've made an extra effort to be very involving, being very transparent, and empower the different functions in our organization. I should say we are around 40 people by now. We are commercializing, so early stage in Europe, and obviously not yet in the US. But the planning part, which I think is one of the other bigger general lessons, spend time planning well, and then you can execute fast. Don't do the opposite, or if you do the fast planning, you will execute slowly. So I'm working on setting the realistic goals that pertain to the stage we are in UNEEG, so that we do the right things in the right order. And then as a new CEO, I'm obviously also building as strong a relationship I can with the board and the owners of UNEEG Medical.
Interesting. Tell me a little bit about that contingency wearing EEG. What's the market you guys are solving? Just a little bit more about the segment.
Yeah. So continuous EEG is, everything related to brain health, but as a emerging company or young company, we need to focus, and that's on epilepsy. And in epilepsy, we have a big unmet need of 1/3 of the population living with epilepsy that have uncontrolled seizures. And even that when they get a medicine, they can stay for 40 months on average on the first medicine before they get a new one and try out. It's based on trial and error because current readings are like 3 or 4 or 5 days if you get into an epilepsy monitoring unit. And then you rely on diaries, like handwritten diaries. And with a continuous EEG monitoring, you'll be able to monitor every kind of a seizure that you're having 24/7. You will see the small nocturnal seizures that the patient may not notice themselves, or the seizures that stem from the part of the brain that controls memory, so they can't remember what kind of seizure they have. So you have a full fact-based diary, so to say, over ultra long term. So that can be, as I said, up to 3 years, where you can monitor your seizures. And on top of that, epilepsy is a dynamic disease, so it changes characteristics over time. So there's even a benefit after you have had the right diagnosis that you keep on wearing it so that you can consult your doctor and look back at your data.
That's amazing. Yeah, really helping those patients get on the therapy that's going to have the most impact, because they know when it has impact, because they don't have to wait 5 days. There's not lag. They can see better signals, and then also monitor the disease as it progresses. And so they can continue to update the therapy to, provide for those uncontrolled epileptic patients. That's a massive need.
It's a massive need. It's 20 million people worldwide living with uncontrolled seizures. And when I speak to some that have these kind of seizures, it's about that they really don't trust themselves any longer. So they don't want to walk out to grocery shopping. It's exactly but once when they get the implant and they get the data, they can rather fast get the right diagnosis, getting the medicine or whatever kind of therapy they need. And what they say is that they gain self-control, they get trust in themselves. So now they can walk outside alone. And imagine that you don't feel safe around walking outside without having somebody around you that you know and that knows you well if you have a seizure. It's important.
That's incredible. And now that you're the CEO of UNEEG, you're mapping archetypes, I'm sure. What's your archetype?
Well, I see myself as a marketeer. I come from the commercial background, and I take pride in understanding a little bit more than the problem solution fit, but the product market fit, and I think that's a benefit. But then I may have some shadow sides on understanding the technology and the clinics in all the detail.
Yeah.
And then there's another archetype, which is the serial entrepreneur. And that's because I've been in the game a long time. So I've also been starting up other companies. So I've been seeing how different things can be achieved. So a little bit of a mix of that, and maybe also a little bit of the breed of the corporate suit, as I call it, because I grew up in corporate life science, which has helped me understand the value of processes and standards and so on, which you cannot adapt one-to-one to startups and scale-ups, but where you understand when is what necessary and explain why.
Yeah. No, I like how you're really blending, a few of those, where you probably started out as that marketeer with a little bit of the corporate suit, but your experience in the startups have made you that serial entrepreneur and bring that flavor in there to really, make that impact.
Yeah, I don't think that you should box yourself in as just one archetype, but you can find that main archetype driving who you are. And then you can say, but I also see some of the other traits. So when you have that discussions, and I had some workshops also on the archetypes, which draws a lot of attention, and people can talk on and on. And I think that's the value of talking about archetypes, is that you can put something in front of you where you say, I identify as this, and therefore I behave like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Well, Martin, if people are interested in scaling life sciences, both either our U.S. audience primarily or European, how would they find out more information about this? And of course, UNEEG. If they want to, they're curious about the company. How would they find out?
Yeah, well, if you want to buy the book, Amazon.com has it available. It's print on demand. I've had a couple of them tested, and the prints are perfect. Barnes & Noble, other online stores, you can have it as an e-reader or ebook or a physical book, as you have. Mm-hmm. In Europe, you can obviously also use Amazon.com, or we have a online bookstore called Saxo.com that ships to most parts of the world anyway, also physical books. So online bookstores all should have availability of these books. And more information you can find on my website, which is scalinglifesciences.com, where I have some downloads of these. It's free of charge, of course. I've also donated the profits of the sales of the book to a nonprofit called Women in Life Science Denmark. I should also mention that I've been financially supported with a grant from the Novo Nordisk Foundation, who covered my direct cost of developing the book. If you want to know more about UNEEG, our website is UNEEG, UNEEG.com, and we are about expanding to the US, of course, so I'm sure we'll be on various different conferences and exhibitions pertaining to neurology and MedTech investor, life science investor conferences. So you'll be able to meet us around different parts of the US in the future.
Excellent. And for those thinking about the book, I will say, reading through this is not one you do a cover to cover. You could, but it's designed really as an ongoing self-help solution with easy navigatable understanding. So it's just really well done. I enjoyed looking through the book. I appreciate sending it to me, and I know other people will gain and benefit. And I love the fact that this is a flywheel, that book sales helps to perpetuate women entrepreneurs, in Nordic and in Denmark. And that's just great, getting more and more, entrepreneurs there. So it's just a really cool story. I love that aspect of it.
Me too.
Well, hey, thank you so much, Martin, for being on this edition of Executive Edge. And this will be posted. You guys, comment below if you have additional questions, insights for Martin or myself. We'll be happy to be monitoring that feed and happy to answer any questions you have. And thank you so much for joining us today on this Executive Edge. And Martin, I really appreciate your insight. I know I've learned a ton, and I'm sure other people will as well.
Thank you so much. It has been a true pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Excellent.